It was just another rainy morning for Xiaoli, a struggling single mom, barely making ends meet, selling breakfast buns on a street corner. She stood under her faded umbrella, hands red from the cold, flipping scallion pancakes on her rusted cart. Her daughter, Lele, just 5, sat curled up nearby on a little stool, wrapped in layers of second-hand sweaters, humming quietly to herself. Life hadn't been kind, but Xiaoli had long learned to smile through the pain. For Lele's sake, she kept going. But that morning, fate had other plans. Just as Xiaoli was packing up after a slow, rainy day, she noticed a crowd gathering near the alley across the street. At first, she ignored it. Fights, accidents, and shouting weren't uncommon in that neighborhood. But then she heard a girl's voice. Weak, breathless, something inside her shifted. Without thinking, she rushed over, weaving through the bystanders. And there, lying in the mud and rain, was a girl, barely older than Lele, pale as paper and barely breathing. She didn't hesitate. Wrapping the soaked girl in her coat, Xiaoli hailed the nearest taxi and rushed her to the hospital, spending every last yuan in her apron pocket to get the emergency treatment started. She didn't know her name, where she came from, or what had happened to her. All she knew was that someone's child was dying, and she couldn't let that happen. What Xiaoli didn't know was that the girl she had just saved wasn't just anyone. Across the city, in a towering glass building, CEO Qin Yicheng was throwing yet another folder across the table in anger. His staff flinched. Ever since his only daughter had gone missing 18 years ago, there was a coldness in him that never faded. He had power, wealth, and success, but none of it meant anything without her. Over the years, he had tried everything. Private investigators, nationwide searches, anonymous donations to orphanages. But no trace of his daughter had ever been found. And yet, that very morning, his secretary rushed in with trembling hands, holding a small rain-soaked bracelet. "Sir, a girl was admitted to Renhei Hospital with this. It's the same design your wife had made before your daughter was taken." Back at the hospital, Xiaoli waited outside the emergency room, soaking wet and exhausted, with Lele asleep on her lap. She didn't expect thanks. She didn't even expect the girl to survive. All she knew was that her own daughter had been so close to death once too, and strangers had walked past. She couldn't do the same. When the doctors came out hours later, they told her the girl had survived, but was still unconscious, her identity unknown. No phone, no ID, just that bracelet. What Xiaoli didn't realize was that her single act of kindness had just thrown her into the center of a storm that would change her life forever. The next day, the hospital was swarmed with men in black suits, luxury cars parked in a row outside. Nurses whispered, staff stared, and then the CEO himself walked in, cold, composed, with eyes that had seen too much. He looked at the girl in the ICU bed, and for the first time in 18 years, his heart trembled. But it didn't end there. As word spread, so did rumors. Who was the woman who brought the girl in? Was she involved? Was it a kidnapping? A setup? Reporters started lurking around the hospital. Rich socialites whispered behind Xiaoli's back, mocking her clothes, her hands, the way she spoke. To them, she was a nobody, a street vendor. But to the girl in the hospital, she was the reason she was still alive. And then came the twist. One day, as Xiaoli was leaving the hospital with Lele, someone stopped her at the gate, a well-dressed woman, elegant, sharp, with a voice full of disdain. "So you're the one pretending to be the girl's mother," she sneered. "Don't get too comfortable. The Qin family doesn't owe you anything. You think saving her earns you a seat at the table. Xiaoli was stunned. I never said I was her mother. I just did what anyone with a heart would do. People, like you don't act out of kindness. The woman snapped. They act out of greed. Before Xiaoli could reply, Lele tugged at her sleeve. Mama, why are they being mean? Xiaoli swallowed the lump in her throat and smiled. It's okay, baby. Let's go home. But home wasn't safe anymore either. Reporters had found her tiny apartment. Paparazzi swarmed her breakfast stall. People accused her of lying, using the girl to get rich. Xiaoli tried to disappear, but the Qin family wasn't done with her. One night, a knock came at her door. It was CEO Qin himself. You saved my daughter's life, he said simply. Tell me everything. And so, she did. But what Xiaoli didn't know was that this meeting would awaken not just a father's gratitude, but also jealousy, secrets, and lies buried deep within the Qin family. Because the girl wasn't just any lost daughter. She was the heir to an empire, and there were many who didn't want her back. Suddenly, Xiaoli found herself caught in a world of wealth, deception, and danger. One moment she was being thanked. The next, she was being accused. Fake relatives appeared. Legal threats came in. Someone even tried to buy her silence. But Xiaoli wasn't the kind to back down. Not when a life was at stake. Still, the question hung in the air. Who left that girl in the alley? Why was she almost dying in the rain? And why? Was the bracelet with her after 18 long years? Xiaoli had no idea, but one thing was certain. Her life, Lele's life, and the girl's life were now tangled together in ways no one could have predicted. And the storm was only just beginning. For days after the visit from CEO Qin, Xiaoli couldn't sleep. The words he said played over and over in her mind. You saved my daughter's life. Tell me everything. She had told him the truth. How she found the girl. How she'd spent her last bit of money to get her help. She didn't expect anything in return. She just wanted the girl to be safe. But things weren't so simple anymore. 2 days later, Qin Yicheng sent someone to pick Xiaoli and Lele up in a black car. She thought it was for another hospital meeting, but instead, they were driven to a private estate. Guarded gates, shining marble floors, chandeliers that looked like stars. It felt like another world. Lele held her mother's hand tightly, whispering, Mama, are we allowed here? They were led into a quiet room, and there, sitting on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, was the girl Xiaoli had saved. Her name was Qin Ziyan. She looked better now, color in her cheeks, eyes clear but distant. She stared at Xiaoli for a long time, then slowly stood and bowed deeply. Thank you for saving me. Xiaoli didn't know what to say. Her heart felt tight. That bow was full of pain, full of something unspoken. But even as the family reunion began to take shape, with media waiting outside, the board of Qin Group preparing a welcome banquet, and the chairman announcing his daughter's return, cracks were already forming. Beneath the surface, Xian had no memory of how she ended up in that alley, no memory of who took her or where she had been. And more importantly, she had no emotional bond with the family that had waited 18 years for her. Qin Yicheng tried, offering her everything, clothes, cars, tutors, vacations. But Xian barely smiled. She didn't seem to trust anyone, except for Xiaoli and little Lele. In private, she'd sit with them for hours, quietly listening to Xiaoli tell bedtime stories to her daughter. Xian started helping Xiaoli in small ways, cutting vegetables, folding clothes, even learning how to flip scallion pancakes, just like she used to. The press called her the lost heiress of Qin Group, but inside, she felt like a ghost in her own story, and not everyone was happy she was back. Within the Chowday Qing group, trouble was brewing. Qin Mu-jing, the chairman's son from his second marriage, had always been the expected heir. Handsome, smooth, and business savvy, he had led the company in his father's absence and had built strong connections with partners. But now, with Xian's return, everything was uncertain. If she reclaimed her place, what would happen to him? At first, he pretended to be warm, calling her sister, sending her gifts, helping her adjust. But behind closed doors, his tone changed. His allies whispered, "She's just a village girl who got lucky." Some said she might be an imposter. Others pushed for a DNA test. And even when it came back positive, the whispers didn't stop. Meanwhile, Xiaoli tried to return to her normal life. But how could she? Her quiet world of breakfast stalls and simple living was now mixed with luxury cars, headlines, and sharp-tongued elites looking down on her. Some even accused her of using Xian to climb the social ladder. One day, while walking Lele home from school, a woman in heels blocked her path. "You must be proud. From breakfast seller to mother of the heiress's savior. What's next?" A mansion. Xiaoli stayed quiet. She wasn't here for fame. But she knew one thing. The world these people lived in was nothing like hers. Yet she was needed now more than ever. Xian was growing more withdrawn. She kept having nightmares. Flashes of darkness. Voices yelling. A cold hand dragging her somewhere. She'd wake up sweating, her heart racing. The doctors said it was trauma. Xiaoli believed it was more. There was something Xian wasn't remembering, or something she was too scared to say. Then, one night, Xian disappeared. The entire estate was turned upside down. Cameras, drones, security, all scrambled. But it was Xiaoli who found her. At the old breakfast stall, Xian sat alone in the rain, holding a half-eaten pancake. "This is the only place that feels real," she whispered when Xiaoli approached. "Everything else feels like a lie." Xiaoli sat beside her, held an umbrella over both of them, and simply said, "Then let's start with the truth." And slowly, piece by piece, Xian began to remember. The woman who raised her had called her by a different name. She was always told to keep quiet, not to ask questions. But once, when she was small, she'd overheard a phone call. Someone saying, "Don't let her remember who she really is." A man's voice, cold, sharp. Xian looked up, her eyes trembling. "I think someone didn't want me to come back." Xiaoli felt a chill run through her. What if Xian hadn't collapsed in that alley by accident? What if someone left her there, hoping no one would find her? And worse, what if that someone was close? That night, while Qin Mu-jing hosted a business dinner at the estate, Xiaoli noticed something strange. He was too calm, too controlled. And when he saw Xian quietly return with Xiaoli, his smile flickered. Later, Xiaoli overheard him talking on the phone, whispering something about the girl getting too close to the truth. The pieces were falling into place, and it was more dangerous than anyone had realized. Xian hadn't just been lost. She had been hidden, and now that she was back, someone was willing to do anything to send her away again. Xiaoli knew one thing for sure. If she wanted to protect Xian, she had to uncover the truth. Even if it meant putting herself in danger, because this wasn't just about family anymore. This was about power, lies, and a girl who had come back from the dead, only to face a new storm, waiting in silence. And just as Xiaoli thought she was getting closer to answers, a car screeched to a stop outside. A stranger stepped out, and with one quiet sentence, turned everything upside down. The car door slammed, and a tall, older man stepped out, his coat soaked with rain. He wasn't flashy, like the other rich people Xiaoli had met these past weeks. He looked tired, serious, but the kind of serious that held weight. His eyes scanned the front yard of the estate until they landed on Xian and Xiaoli. Then he spoke quietly but firmly. "She's not safe here." Qin Yicheng came rushing out moments later, surprised to see the man. "Secretary Lin, you disappeared after the accident 18 years ago." The old man didn't flinch. "Because I was told to disappear." Xian stepped forward, confused. "Who are you?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I was the one who carried you in my arms the night you were born. I served your mother until her last breath, and I saw everything that night. The fire, the lies, and the betrayal." Everyone froze. Xiaoli's heart started pounding. "What betrayal?" Secretary Lin took a deep breath. "The night the Qin estate caught fire, your mother had just discovered a plot, a forged will, a cover-up to replace her child. You with someone else. That someone was arranged by your uncle and Mu Jing's mother." Gasps broke out from the few family staff standing nearby. Even Qin Yicheng looked like he'd been slapped. "That's not possible. I would have known." "You trusted the wrong people," Lin said, his voice low. "Your daughter wasn't lost by accident. She was taken." Xian's face went pale. She looked at Mu Jing, who stood still, but his jaw was tight. His eyes flickered. Guilty. Xiaoli finally understood. It wasn't just jealousy or competition. This had been planned from the start. Xian wasn't just a threat to the company. She was a threat to a lie that had been carefully built for years. And now, the truth was out. Qin Yicheng stepped forward, eyes locked on his son. "Mu Jing, tell me it isn't true." Mu Jing didn't answer. His silence was louder than any words. Xian turned away, her body trembling. Xiaoli reached out, holding her hand. "You're not alone anymore." What followed in the next few days was a storm of consequences. Qin Yicheng held a press conference, publicly acknowledging Xian as his only legal heir. He stepped down as CEO and named her as successor. A symbolic move, but one that shook the corporate world. Mu Jing's power was stripped, and the family launched a full investigation into everything that had happened. Secretary Lin submitted years of hidden documents showing proof of the cover-up. The story spread like wildfire online. Heiress. Hidden for 18 years. Family power struggle exposed. Keywords like lost daughter, poor single mom, breakfast seller saves CEO's child, and King Group inheritance drama were trending everywhere. But the real victory wasn't in headlines or shares. It was the quiet moment in a park weeks later. Xian sat on a bench, no makeup, no bodyguards, just her. A paper bag of warm pancakes in her hand, and Lei on her lap, chattering away about cartoons. Xiaoli sat beside them, sipping cheap soy milk. For the first time in years, she felt peace. Xian smiled softly. "I used to think I had no home, but maybe I just hadn't found the right people yet." Xiaoli nudged her. "You've got a home now. Not perfect, but real." Lei giggled. "Yeah, and pancakes every morning." They all laughed. In the distance, Qin Yicheng was playing chess with a group of old men, blending into normal life. He came over with 2 bags of fruit, awkwardly holding one out to Xiaoli. I didn't know which apples you like, so I got both." She chuckled. "You didn't have to. I want to," he said, quietly. "Not to repay you, but because I want to be part of your lives. If you'll let me." She looked at Lei, who beamed at the thought of having a grandpa, then at Xian, who nodded gently. "Okay." Xiaoli said, smiling. One step at a time. Because in the end, this wasn't just a story about wealth or power. It was about second chances. A lost girl finding her identity. A mother who gave everything to save a stranger. A broken family trying to heal. And most of all, it was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, a warm pancake, a helping hand, a stranger who cares, can change everything. And just like that, a poor single mom who once sold breakfast by the roadside found herself at the center of a story no one could have imagined. A story of truth, love, and a life no longer spoiled by lies, but finally made whole by honesty and heart.